I kept the cataloging spire alone for 11 years, and in that time the only sound that wasn't my own breathing was the hum. The hum was mine. I built it myself, out of spare calibration cycles, because a listening post with no second voice in it will eventually convince you that your instruments have stopped working, even when they haven't. So every 6 hours the array ran a low, 10-second resonance through an unused sideband. Not a signal, not a message, just a tone I used to confirm the gain stages were alive and the dish hadn't drifted off true. I called it a heartbeat because that's what it was for. It told me, and only me, that something in this place was still working. The spire itself sat on a gray moon nobody had renamed since the Empire stopped sending anyone to rename things out here. Daylight came through the old observation glass in long flat bars, dust hanging in it like sediment in still water, and from the gallery you could see the whole dead trade route laid out below, derelict beacons, a scatter of cargo hulls too old to be worth salvaging, the kind of view that made you understand exactly how far down the priority list you'd fallen. My actual work was simpler than the view suggested. I logged traffic. Every frequency that crossed this sector, registered or not, got a file. Origin, content, disposition. Most files closed themselves. Most of what crosses an empty sector is noise. I had not always been alone here. There had been a second archivist when I first transferred in, an older man named Corvin Hask, who taught me the filing conventions and the long, dull patience the job demanded. And when the Empire reassigned him 11 years ago and never sent a replacement, I told myself it was an oversight that would correct itself within the season. It did not correct itself. The spire's posting stayed open on the roster and unfilled in practice, and after the second year I stopped checking the roster at all. I kept the cataloging standards exactly as Hask had taught them, because letting the standards slip felt like the first real sign that the post, and not just the person in it, had been forgotten. So when the proximity alarm went off on a morning with nothing scheduled, nothing inbound, and no traffic logged in 9 days, I assumed the alarm was wrong. I had assumed the alarm was wrong twice before in 11 years, and been right both times. I was wrong this time. It came in low and slow, the way something comes in when it isn't trying to surprise anyone. Running lights steady, no weapons signature, broadcasting an identification string in a format my archive had no entry for. Not Empire, not any of the 4 neighboring polities whose ships I'd cataloged 1,000 times over. It set down on the apron outside the spire's lower hatch with the unhurried precision of something that had done this exact maneuver more times than I could guess, and then it simply waited, running its lights, the way a thing waits when it has already decided what happens next, and is only being polite about the order of operations. It was small, smaller than a shuttle. No crew compartment I could find when I finally went down to look at it through the hatch glass, just a blunt, scarred hull, old in a way that suggested use rather than neglect, and a single stenciled designation along the flank, Tessera 19. Under that, smaller, in a script I didn't recognize until I ran it through the archive and got a single, ancient cross-reference, Terran, Earth. I want to be precise about what I felt, because precision is the only thing this job ever asked of me. I did not feel rescued. I had not called for rescue. I felt the way you feel when a stranger answers a question you don't remember asking out loud. It deployed a short ramp, unhurried, and a single manipulator arm extended from its underside, no larger than my own, and it did not gesture or display or attempt any of the things I'd read that first contact protocol expected of a vessel announcing itself. It went straight to the array housing on the spire's north face. The housing for my hum opened an access panel that should not have matched any port standard it could possibly have on file, and began, with the patient thoroughness of an old technician who has fixed this exact fault 100 times before, taking the sideband emitter apart. I tried hailing it twice from the gallery comm, on every band I had clearance for, and got back nothing but a faint acknowledgement chirp on a frequency too narrow to carry words. The kind of reply a system gives when it has registered that you exist, and has decided that is sufficient information for the moment. It did not look up. It did not slow down. Whatever it had come to do, my questions were not part of the task list. I stood in the access corridor and watched a machine with no listed origin perform unscheduled maintenance on my own equipment, and I did not stop it. Because somewhere in the 11 years of being the only voice in this place, I had lost the instinct to be alarmed by competence. It took 4 hours. When it was done, it left behind a sealed case of components. Gain stages, a length of shielded cable, 2 parts I didn't have a name for, and would later discover, fit a housing fault I hadn't yet diagnosed myself, and a short data plaque, the kind meant to be read by hand rather than by machine, in case the machine reading it had stopped trusting other machines. I did not read it immediately. I went back to my own terminal first, because the only way I know how to feel anything, out here, is to file it. The trace took most of the night. I pulled 11 years of calibration logs and laid the leak's signature against every recorded frequency drift, and what I found was almost insulting in its simplicity. My own hum, the heartbeat I'd built to prove to myself that something here still worked, had been bleeding 3% of its power off the side of the dish since approximately year 4. Not toward the trade lanes, not toward the Empire's relay chain, off at an angle nobody charts because nobody flies there, straight out, into the kind of silence that only old, patient listening equipment ever bothers to monitor anymore. I had never aimed anything at Earth. I had not known, until that night, that Earth was still listening to anything out here at all. The plaque, when I finally read it, said almost nothing. A registration code, a diagnosis, unscheduled life sign emission, low confidence, 11-year duration. A single line under that, in the flat procedural voice these things apparently default to no matter who built them. Maintenance program Tessera holds no standing order to ignore a confirmed life sign, regardless of confidence or duration. Repair complete. No response requested. No response requested. I sat with that line longer than I sat with anything else on the plaque. I ran the registration code afterward against what little open-source Terran data existed in the archive, mostly trade-era leftovers nobody had bothered to purge, and found a single brittle reference to a maintenance lattice Earth had seeded across a wide stretch of old survey space generations back. Not a fleet, not a network of listening posts, just a scattered population of small, patient, self-sufficient units built to do one thing indefinitely. Notice when something that should be making noise had gone quiet, or when something that had never been expected to make noise started making a little anyway. Most of the lattice, the record suggested, had gone silent itself over the centuries. Drones lost to drift or decay, or simple bad luck. Nobody on Earth, as far as I could tell, was actively managing what remained. Tessera 19 had apparently just kept doing its job, alone, the same way I had kept mine, on the assumption that someone, eventually, would still need it to. 11 years of filing other people's emergencies, and the one piece of help that ever found its way to my door had come because some program, on some world I had never been close enough to see with my own instruments, had decided a very long time ago that a flicker this faint still counted, and had never once revisited that decision. The drone lifted off before dawn, running the same steady lights, asking nothing, leaving nothing behind but the case and the plaque and a sideband emitter quietly repaired to specification. I logged the encounter the way I logged everything. Origin unregistered, content non-combative, disposition resolved. As far as the Empire's record is concerned, the matter is closed. I did not file it as fully closed in the only ledger that matters to me. I left the new emitter running at 97% of its rated output instead of 100, which means, if I have the engineering right, that there is still a thread of that hum bleeding off the same angle it always did, fainter now, repaired and steady, but pointed the same way. I tell myself it is a calibration choice. I run it anyway, every 6 hours, the way I always have, and I have stopped calling it a heartbeat to anyone but myself. Nobody asked me to keep listening for them. I don't expect they will come back, but something out there decided, on its own authority, a long time before I ever sat down at this console, that a single faint signal was worth answering, and I have decided, on mine, that it is worth staying worth answering for.